for surviving the late afternoon lunch lull here. So I'm going to talk about some data stemming from a large survey of faculty that I conducted last spring at FIRE. So kind of a prevailing thought that I have too with data like this. So we've heard from some of the earlier presenters today talking about prevalence of self-censorship, examples of self-censorship. What I often find is many in the academy aren't convinced. And so you just need to keep hitting them over the data or hitting them over the head with data and more data and more data. So hopefully this will be some data to throw into the pile that might be useful for some of you as you're talking with colleagues or others about these issues. So this stems from a survey conducted spring 2024. Some of you in this room may have received an invitation to participate and may have participated. So a little over 6,000 faculty at 55 universities across the United States participated in this study, the largest survey of faculty on issues of free speech and dynamics on campus. Not going to talk about this or read through this definition, but I just wanted to put this up here. Before we asked the primary questions about self-censorship, we did define it for faculty participants. And I think this is important to note because when I talk about self-censorship in these results, I'm not talking about faculty who are self-censoring because they're trying to be professional or they're trying to be polite. So many of us may refrain from saying certain things to try to be professional or to try to be polite. That, especially in the context of these results, is not self-censorship. So that's kind of a different category or a different beast. So to open up, we asked a variety of questions about self-censoring in professional contexts. So how likely were faculty to self-censor in the research topics investigated? This is kind of our floor. So about 1 in 5 said, yeah, I'm at least I'm at least likely or maybe very likely or extremely likely to self-censor in what I study. This rose to 27% self-censoring in what they publish, 41% in talks that they give to outside audiences, 42% in classroom lectures and discussions, and then the largest was 56% saying they self-censor in what they say online or by email or in other online contexts. So we see varying levels of self-censorship across different contexts, but but we see a floor of at least 1 in 5. Now, this next figure, it's going to be very tiny. If you're interested in looking at it closer, I'll have a link to the report at the end. But kind of the gist of these two is just to show that when these 5 questions are split out both by ideology and by whether or not the faculty were tenured or not tenured, you see clear differences. So conservative faculty and also moderate faculty were more likely to self-censor across these professional contexts, as were faculty who did not have tenure. And interestingly, so the dark blue bars are faculty who are tenured. Self-censorship wasn't absent among tenured faculty, kind of going to a point that Musa was making earlier, that if you have faculty who for the entirety of their pre-tenure time aren't speaking up, then what's to say when all of a sudden you get your golden tenure ticket that you're all of a sudden going to become an outspoken critic of things that you need to be a critic of? Possibly not. Also asked about self-censorship in the context of conversations that faculty may have. So with administrators, with students, with other faculty, we see hovering around 28% of faculty saying, yes, I self-censor at least fairly often, a couple times a week in conversations with people from these different groups on campus. Additionally, I asked a broader question. This question was, how often, if at all, do you feel that you can't express your opinion because of how other students, faculty, not other students, how other faculty, so colleagues, students or the administration might respond? So we see that 27% said that they're at least fairly often do engage in this. I think this is very telling too. So split out by ideology, nearly half of the conservative faculty said that at least fairly often, so a couple times a week or more, they're feeling that they can't express their opinion, compared to only 1 in 5 liberal faculty. And again, we see a slight difference here between tenured and untenured faculty. We wanted to be able to contextualize some of our results in the context of past research. So there's a classic study conducted back in the 1950s, Lazarfield and Thielens, asked a variety of questions. We incorporated one question here In our study, we asked about if faculty have recently toned down anything that they've written because they're afraid of causing controversy. So back during McCarthyism, the height of the Red Scare, about almost 1 in 10, so 9% of social scientists said, yes, I've toned down my writing because I don't want to cause controversy. We found that 1 in 3 faculty, so about 33%, 34%, said that they're toning down with their writing because they don't want to cause any controversy today. So much significantly larger percentage or proportion there. We honed in a bit on trying to probe the motivations perhaps behind different types of self-censorship the faculty were engaging in. So one area that we probed was related to politics. So how often, if at all, faculty hide their political beliefs in an attempt to keep their job. So almost 3 in 10 said, I fairly often hide my political beliefs to try to keep my job. Again, probably unsurprisingly, we see very stark ideological differences here. Over half of conservative faculty saying they at least fairly often, a couple times a week, hide their political beliefs to try to keep their job, whereas less than 1 in 5 liberal faculty say that they have to engage in this. And then we also see a slight difference here between tenured and untenured faculty. So a little over 1 in 3 faculty who don't have tenure saying that they hide their political beliefs to try to keep their job. Now, I venture to guess that these results that I've talked about so far aren't really that surprising. It's not like you're walking down a road and you don't know what's going to come around the bend. It's like, well, many of you might personally have self-censor in what you write or what you talk about or what you study. And so it's perhaps not super novel. But for those of you who might not engage in this or might not be familiar with these data, I think it's helpful to have reliable data so that we can talk about it, so that we can cite it in our own research and then perhaps do something about it. And when I see these results, I often wonder, what's the motivation? Why are faculty engaging in this? I think there's a lot of reasons. We had 2 questions in this survey that I think start to give us a glimpse of what's going on here. And this goes to points also discussed in a couple earlier presentations, but I think one of the biggest is reputation. So we have over half of conservative faculty and even a little over 1 in 3 liberal faculty saying that they are worried about damaging their reputation because somebody misunderstands something that they've said or done. So they're self-censoring because they don't want their reputation to be damaged. And to not to an equal extent, but also to a consequential extent, we see that about 1 in 3 conservative faculty are perhaps self-censoring because they're worried about losing their job, because someone misunderstands something that they've said or done. So I think reputation is a big part. Losing their job is also a concern. Now, just to bring in a little theory as we're bringing this home. So Lee and I have written a bit about what we call a model of political bias. This is our political bias wheel. I think in many ways, the impact of censorship could be a very long arm, having a wide impact on many operations or many elements of key operations within the academy, which is perhaps why we're all gathered here to discuss censorship. In this model, we talk about a variety of things. So political bias can impact all of these. And I think to for almost an equal extent, censorship can impact these things as well, particularly if faculty are self-censoring. Faculty self-censoring might not ask certain research questions. They might not use certain measurements or certain questions in their studies. They might come to different interpretations or have interpretations that they don't discuss. Most directly, suppression of ideas and findings might not publish a paper that comes to a politically inconvenient conclusion, because if we're operating in a social reputational system whereby to get into grad school, to get a tenure track job, to get promoted, to get fellowships and grants, you need positive evaluations from your peers. What incentives are there to push the envelope or to have findings that your colleagues may not appreciate? So I think all of these things can exacerbate self-censorship. And then collectively or also individually work to undermine the credibility of the academy and the work that we're doing. But just as a final stat to consider here, so maybe you might be familiar, maybe not. I know this is tiny. We've seen over time faculty have been predominantly liberal. This has been growing in recent years. Some recent numbers saying that faculty, about 75% of faculty identify as liberal, declining percents moderate, and only about 10 to 12% identify as conservative. And so if you take that in concert with about half of conservative faculty saying that they feel that they can't express their opinion, they are worried that they might lose their job, damage their reputation. So if we take 100 faculty, this is the proportion, and half conservative faculty are saying, hey, I don't feel like I can speak up, I can't share my views, then you're automatically slicing this small chunk of quote unquote viewpoint diversity within the academy to even a smaller chunk who may or may not actually feel comfortable talking up. And then if you consider the liberal faculty who feel that they can't speak openly, then we have an even larger chunk of white. But as to perhaps a tentative solution, and we can talk about this more during Q&A or afterwards, perhaps consider institutional neutrality. So there's not a lot of data out there about what faculty think about this, but we did ask 2 questions in this survey, and overwhelmingly faculty endorsed institutional neutrality. So about 2 and 3 said colleges and universities, and then also that faculty units, so departments, should not take positions on social or political issues. So I think if universities are saying we're not going to engage in that, that could create an environment where faculty may feel more comfortable speaking up, may not feel that they have to self-censor in their work. So thank you. Looking forward to your questions. Here's the QR code for the report.